and I am the mayor of Estacada, and this is a little story about a fire. Estacada is a feeling, it's a place, and if it's a place like I believe it is, it's a place you'll make your home. You'll raise your children, your families, whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, Estacada is a way of life. And people have been moving out here to be a part of that life because it is probably the best thing you'll experience ever. You know, you've got neighbors that love each other, that fight for each other. We sometimes forget we're neighbors. You know, we fight like kids sometimes. But at the end of each day, it's a way of life that I think everybody wants. You know, they want to know they're safe. They want to know they can raise their children there. They can go to church there. They can grocery shop there. They can see their friends at the grocery store and talk for an hour if they want to. Forget what they even went to the grocery store for. But that's the kind of town we all signed on for. And that's the kind of town we're protecting here. And I think people need to know that when they talk about Estacada, because it's a heartfelt place. The fire was a unusual experience to deal with. As a mayor, I wish I'd never had to deal with that in my time, but that wasn't the case. Estacada was facing something that was extremely rare and at the same time very dangerous. And I don't think any of us were ready for what happened. The Dowty fire was in Eagle Creek. It sprung up because somebody was burning something in their field, which I got to tell you, that's kind of absurd, but it happened. And that started the Dowty fire. Now,
went out to Dowty Road to see what was going on. There was smoke and stuff going on. And came up around near the Eagle Creek golf course and where the fire was at, and kind of pulled up and saw that there was people that were leaving the area. They were evacuating some residents.
They brought their equipment in and made fire lines. Brent Perry's, without him down in that end, Dowty Road area, everything would look completely different. They stopped fire it was going.
As that fire sprung into action, then we had another worry. Now the fire was on the other side of us, coming this direction, which was, you know, kind of a scary thought, but it wasn't moving as fast as the other fire was. So the Dowty fire moved up the ridge in Springwater, kind of jumped Springwater. A lot of individuals had to spring into action to get that fire out, and in the end result, they managed to get that fire tampered down, and there were a lot of people that were misplaced because of it. Well, that gave us more people at the rescue center and more people who needed assistance. But there were the same people out there for days and days and days, helping as many people as they could, and they never faltered. It was the 7th of September. Wind came out of the east. It was hot, very hot. It started with a little puff of smoke out in the distance. You could see it. Nobody really thought much of it. You know, we thought, okay, a little fire, nothing major. Then as the day progressed, we heard that the fires were starting up in other areas, the Beachy Creek fire, which made it even scarier. That east wind was coming in. It was hot. You know, it was anywhere from, God, that day 90 to 100 degrees out there. All the plants were dying, so it was pretty unusual. And then that smoke started getting bigger. And I remember towards evening hours, out there watering my lawn and watching a cloud that was very ominous, coming our direction. Now at that time, I thought, okay, this is not right. This is getting out of hand. As the cloud progressed and the sun was covered up, and it was a very dark and immense looking evening, things really came to more of a reality. I think the media started covering it left and right. They were sending messages over the airwaves that the fire was progressing at a high rate of speed. The wind was even more intense than it had been during the day. Then that night, we all went to bed like everything was, copacetic, and we thought, okay, it's happening. They're going to get it out. Everything's going to be good, and we're all going to go back to our normal lives the next day. Well, the next day came, and that wasn't the case. At that point, the fire had progressed. I think they said something like 10 to 17 miles in one day, one night. It became a real reality, quick and in a hurry, and I don't think anybody was prepared for that.
All of a sudden, the next day, we were informed that the Riverside fire had went from, which is a different fire, had traveled like a whole bunch of miles really overnight, and it was closing in on Estacada. And so we were evacuated.
There was a meeting of the Forest Service, the State Patrol, the Clackamas officers regarding evacuation and what the procedure was for an evacuation. I attended that meeting that morning. That meeting is the same meeting that initiates the evacuation for Clackamas County. In that, we were partway into the meeting. I think it was about 10:46. And at that point, they decided that we were going into evacuation 3, which is the end. There's nothing after that. Evacuation 3 means everybody goes, no matter what. They turned to me in that meeting and they said, their exact words were, "Sean, call your people and get them out of there."
We're very concerned at the times of the fire and the location of the fire and how the wind was driving the fire. So we began to prepare. We stayed up there quite a bit at night, a lot outside, watching the surrounding areas. We began to prepare with water tanks.
So I proceeded to go through the procedure that mayors hope they never have to experience. I called my city manager first off, and I said, "We are in evac 3. Start the process, get the word out, get everybody out of Estacada, start evacuating." She at that point told me, "Okay, we'll start that process."
How can I help? What do you need us to do? And he goes, use whatever channels you have to get people out of there. I said, okay. I'll call my people, let them know, and we got a bullhorn in the vehicle. We'll go out and just do everything we can. We'll let businesses know, then we'll go to the neighborhoods and hit them up with bullhorns. And he said, okay, and do what you gotta do. And then he called called a couple of counselors and the city manager, let them know what was going on. I don't know that part of the conversation. I wasn't in that.
And he was with me in the meeting, so he heard everything. And I said, well, you've heard the warning, so we have to get started. I sent him on his way to do his part. He went to Estacada and started warning businesses that this was the time to leave. There was no second chance. We have to be out of there.
For the first time in my life, moving here to Estacada with my wife, having to actually evacuate and not do it for a living. That was definitely something different where I had to adjust to.
County hadn't caught up with us until about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock that afternoon. They finally initiated their evac 3, and then my city proceeded to follow the county's recommendation.
We were on point watching to see which way these things were going to go. Spoke to a lot of people up there. The smoke was very, very thick. There'd been a point where we were supposed to evacuate. The power was shut down, so we had generators to run the well. a lot of folks were leaving. We watched a lot of animals coming down the road at night, folks getting their livestock out of there.
I know out where I live on Hillock Burn, Randall Road area, we evacuated early. I wanted to stay there for a while, but my youngest daughter wouldn't let me. She kept calling and telling me to get out of there. But I was gravely concerned, but I never panicked or anything because I've seen a lot of these fires.
See, I made a promise when I was out there. I could have went to a hotel or evacuated like everybody else, but I wasn't that kind of guy. I wanted everybody to know what was happening in and out. Every time I was hearing something, I was telling everybody what I'd heard, what was coming across the airwaves, trying to keep everybody calm. Because a lot of people were losing their homes. A lot of things happened out there that I personally feel immensely for. I couldn't solve, every problem that came out there, but I wanted to make sure they felt comfortable. I was always going to spend every night in those camps to make sure that everybody was hearing directly what was happening.
We decided to go to Sandy, over to the movie theater, along with probably about 40 other residents from Estacada. They brought everything, RVs, horses, and we met quite a few people over there.
I was running around the Fred Meyer parking lot trying to, tell people what I had heard, what was coming out of Estacada, what people were saying, and I got caught up in these, I think they call them burberry bushes. It tripped me and I went face first into the parking lot, smacked my head on the back of the truck, about knocked myself out, but needless to say, I just got back up and got back to it. It was, it was one of those things.
I mean, we knew it was serious, it was scary, for sure. But we weren't in that doomsday mode yet. We weren't at that point of, oh my God, we could lose our town yet. We were at that point of, oh my gosh, this is scary. So we went to Sandy. Joel stayed behind as usual.
A guy came to our door and said, we are evacuating. And that was the trailer door. And he wanted to check on our well-being. Then we started packing. And we had a place to stay in Gresham. So we hurried up and got out. It seemed like a dream, especially the next morning waking up in a totally different surrounding that wasn't our home.
Day 2 was absolutely probably the worst since going back to the 90s of my old job, seeing just so much burn and have to exist in that small area there, and in the RV, and Abundant Life Church, and let's see, the other church on the top of the hill, Good Shepherd Community Church, stepped up quite a bit, and they really were looking out.
And at the time, it was, yes, we don't care. If you need a place of refuge, this is the place to be. We took in people from Sandy, Estacada, Boring, Eagle Creek, even one on the south side of Gresham. And it was maybe a day or two when things actually started rolling and people started showing up.
Said, is this for real? Are you really opening up your property for people to come stay there? And he's like, yeah, that's why I made the post.
So the outpour of the community, we couldn't have done it without them. This was a true camaraderie of people that just cared.
So it was interesting as people were pulling into the driveway and opening this big gate, kind of directing people where to go, where can they set up. People were showing up in cars and trucks. Some had trailers, some had just tents. Some people had full-on campers. When people didn't have anything to stay in, we said, here, take our camper, you can set up in there and stay warm. One person accidentally took out a fence post, but hey, stuff happens. So that was fine.
At the peak of things, I think we had right around 100 people on the property, 2 horses. We wound up making a trip to Home Depot, and we bought, several racks. We jumped on Messenger. We bought a couple extra refrigerators and freezers, and we turned the entire garage into a Grange hall. There was coffee. There were several pots of coffee that was going 24/7 whenever you wanted it. All the refrigerators were community. We kind of turned part of it into like a store almost, where you could come in and look around on the racks and grab anything that you needed. You just come in. We left the garage door open. We opened the house up. We were cooking meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
I mean, it was really cool just how everybody came together. It wasn't if we could make it work, it was how do we make it work?
We got everybody out. The evacuations were all done. The city was out. There was nobody running the city at that time. They had all left on the evac notice. At that time, Clackamas was running the show. And Clackamas was not doing a very good job. They did not notify me as to what was happening. I was blind in this whole fire situation. So all I had was my eyes on the ground. One of the people I was speaking about obviously was my eyes on the ground. He was helping me to make sure that we had everything under control, that we were making sure people were getting evacuated, that we were making sure people were getting what they needed, that we were giving them help wherever we could.
And once we got the word that our fire department actually just basically put their hoses down and just were like, we're out of here, my wife started crying, and I was like, seriously, this is what we worked for, retire, and the fire department is just gonna just lay down and just basically, not protect the town.
We were now at the point where the fire had gotten way past anything we had expected. It was headed towards Estacada, and it was moving fast. The 2 Beachy Creek fires and the Riverside fire were coming closer and closer together. The Clackamas fire crews were afraid that the 2 fires were going to merge. At that point, they decided to pull back. In that, they pulled back to a nearby school, or high school, to reevaluate their situation.
This is the moment I remember the most. So we were sitting up at Sandy. We got evacuated September 8th, and September 10th, he comes back, and this is like his first visit. Okay, he'd been out there all this time. He comes back up to where I'm evacuated just to get a couple hours of sleep. He was so worn out. He hadn't slept. He could have easily gone to our house in town, but he came up there to see us, see me and Riley, give us a hug. He threw up all over the place when he got out of the truck or the vehicle because the smoke was so bad down there, or down here in Estacada. And then he comes in and he looks at me and he says, they're gonna let it burn. They're backing off. They're taking, the firefighters are leaving. They're gonna let it burn.
Now, mind you, this order was given by the governor. So when we got this, it was kind of a shock. The governor called me at about 3:30 in the afternoon. I was out at one of the evacuation sites in Sandy, Fred Meyer. I was speaking to the people, trying to keep everybody calm and letting them know, piece by piece what was happening in Estacada, trying to keep everybody's worries at bay, which was hard to do considering I didn't know if tomorrow our city was even going to be there. In that, as I said, the governor called me, and her words to me were, "Sean, I got some bad news for you." And I said, "Well, what's happening?" And she said, "Molalla and Estacada are going to burn. You need to pull your people out." And I was like, "Excuse me?" Meaning that I couldn't even believe she said that to me. "What do you mean they're going to burn?" She said, "I've pulled back all the firefighters. The fires are going to merge. 2 cities are going." I was like, "Not my city." And those are the last words I remember saying to her. And phone went dead, and I went to deal with what was happening.
Being told, as you're evacuating the second time, being told that your higher ups in government, your state, governor, and this county that's in charge of our town for fire relief felt that we weren't important enough to save. That was a major letdown. And I think that to hear that, it was devastating. It was soul crushing. I think that was the most broken I've been in a long time. To hear that that's what they thought of us.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I remember most was at that time we were under Clackamas County Fire, and they decided to take a pause and pulled back, and that's when other people in town said, "Excuse me, the fire isn't pausing. What the hell are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we want to strategize." And we're sitting here thinking, the strategy is to go out there and fight the damn thing, not sit in the parking lot and talk about it.
If this is a crime or not, but we were determined to stay and do everything we could. Later, we had heard there was an edict that was handed down through the governor of our state to evacuate, that the town was going to be empty. The citizens needed to get out because it was going to burn. The town was going to burn. And when I heard that, I was rather appalled, but it really didn't change anything. The assignment was protect and serve and put out fire.
If my city's going to burn, I'm going to be the first one and the last one out. I will save everything that is Estacada first. So I wasn't going to let that happen. So my initial goal was to run and find the fire department, Clackamas, which I did find, by the way. They were at our local high school having a buffet. Reassessing. They were reassessing, going back in and fighting this fire. And I was having a hard time with that. I was thinking, reassessing. We're here having a buffet and we're reassessing, and Estacada is about to burn to the ground. Does anybody see anything wrong with that? I sure do. I sure do. And that's what I was doing. I was finding people that were still fighting for something that meant more to them than a buffet or protocol. They were fighting for their city. And that's what I was doing that night. So, after talking to the governor, that's where I was. But these people were fighting this fire. People who have homes, farms, houses, everywhere. They have school kids in our school system. They were out there with pick and shovels and backhoes and water trucks and everything you can imagine fighting these fire. And I remember seeing little kids running around helping put out a fire that was going to take their town. And not for 1 second did they hesitate. And I don't care how close those fires came, they never looked the other way. They fought day in and day out until this fire was back down. And I think this interview should be about the brave men and women and children who stood out there and fought hour after hour to save this city. That's what this is really all about. And me being the mayor, I was all over the place trying trying to keep it together. But I am nothing compared to these people. All these people did their job, and they acted like they'd done this every day of their life. And they do it every day of their life, no matter what, because this meant that much to them. Saving the city meant that much to them.
Began to really be concerned about the location of which way that wind was blowing the fire. So we started going out. I believe we went out in documentation. We have a lot of videos of what we were doing. We started out on the 9th, and as we saw other folks out there also, which had water tanks in the back of their pickups, and also the same thing, a generator with pump, we would come across grass fire. Before it was heading to the tree line, that was on 224, trying to stop things from spreading. So we went along the side of the road, hosed everything down. Later we had met up with fire trucks and the fire personnel, and they kind of said there were some places they couldn't get into, which was off-road down by Faraday and the dam, and so we were able to get down there in pockets that they couldn't get into, and we took out a lot of the low brush fires. All of this stuff was a real teamwork effort. There was other people out there doing the same thing. Everybody was concerned about property and stopping the fires before it hit the homes. Basically, like, people say, well, you really weren't an authorized firefighter. No, we weren't. We were citizens with water. And we put out fires that the majority of the fire department couldn't get to because they were on the heavy stuff. So as far as being in the community, we did what we could do, and it was successful. So we went through this. I ended up down at Faraday. The alarm system was going off at the gate. We're not really sure how this happened, but there was to the entrance to the dam, there was no one down there. The alarm was squelching. We looked for people. We tried to find if there were any personnel there. There was not. They were all evacuated. And so in that area there, we did the best we could. We did have a chainsaw. We cut down some stuff that was starting to light up and got it down and soaked it down. Folks were saying, look, they've got a fire on a hillside. It's coming towards their barn. We'd get off. We'd just unroll the hose. We had 300 feet. We would drive off-road also onto their property with permission, and just took out the little guys, the ones that could have been detrimental to stuff. And there was a lot of folks set up with food and water along the side of the road. My neighbor, Nolan Bechtel, he had his team out there. They were offering up water, coffee, drinks 24 hours a day up off of Jumala, Spa Mountain Road up there. And like I said, there was a lot of people out there doing whatever they could. I know Youngberg was totally on it with equipment, and they were doing the big stuff, and we're doing the little stuff. I think what this whole thing was about was not walking away. Depending on someone else to do something for you seems to be the mode of a lot of our country. But the country wasn't built on waiting for somebody else to do something for you. So our take on it, I believe the people in the community, is you need to do what you need to do when you need to do it. The point was the community came together, but I believe the backbone of the community was to stay and pursue and do everything we could. I just am really happy for everybody that stayed, and you could say, well, they disobeyed the authority. Well, no, they protected their farms and their homes as best they could. And I'm all for government. I think government is wonderful, but when it causes folks to lose things and the decisions that are made, and this is only my opinion, it causes a ripple effect in the community. And so hats off to all those people that stayed.
I don't know if I really slept at all. For at least the first 72 hours, I'd say it was hard to even think about sleep. I mean, I tried to lay down, but laying down wasn't happening. You know, I knew there were things to be done, and I just couldn't leave everybody to do those things without me trying to help as best I could. And two, I gotta give a call out to the hot shots. When the hot shots showed up, the game plan changed. I think they had heard that there was a bunch of yahoos out here in Estacada and they might get shot. These guys went out, they fought that fire, they got on it, they kept us updated. They kept us updated better than the fire department. I didn't have to search these guys out. They found me, and they kept me updated on a regular basis. Me and my cohort that was there at the time. It was incredible. They did a great job. But sleep, no, I don't think sleep is something we did. It just was off the map until everything was, in a sense, we felt safe again.
When the level 1 firefighters got here, and we made quick friends of those folks. They saw what we had done, and they appreciated what we did, and they took our knowledge of the area. Ben Wheeler, Chad Wheeler, Jeremiah Platt, all of those guys have done a lot of work. They were involved in they gave all this knowledge of old roads that could be easily opened. Those guys were key. The level 1 second in command came to my place that first week every morning at 10 o'clock, and he gleaned information from those guys. So what I describe as driving right into hell. It was just a wall of red, and we started putting water on the fire, and we saved some homes, opened their gates, and went in and knocked down fire that was literally touching brand spanking new homes. We just kept putting water on the fire, and the water that I had put out prior, just trying to slow the fire down, like I said, to fight it. You could see where the fire came down to that water line and stopped in most places. That part was pretty exciting to see that actually worked. But then it just got heavier duty from there. More neighbors involved. The Mennonite community was tremendous. Doug Davidson, without him and his trucks that he allowed me to use and his big truck, Estacada wouldn't look the same today.
You know, the smaller fires, I mean, we couldn't do anything really big because we weren't set up with big tanker trucks. We had basically a flatbed with a water tank on the back, you know, just a little plastic box tank with a generator running a pump, so we could, you know, basically just a garden hose. You know, we were mostly fighting fires, Fall Creek Road, I think there was Michaels Road, I'm trying to remember all the roads, Divers Road. I mean, there was just so many areas around there where it was trying to creep up, you know, and we were, I mean, there was all kinds of people. There were people putting stuff out with buckets. I mean, everybody was doing what they could. I mean, everybody was getting together and doing what they could. I mean, they were at the top of the hill, but there was a bunch of fires down below, and we just trucked down in there and just started fighting stuff, and they didn't stop us. So, and there was a few people, I'm not going to name names because some of them I don't even know, but that were just telling us, you need to stop what you're doing or we're going to have you arrested. And it's like, you know, I mean, what option do we really have? I mean, so you're saying we just lose everything out of the fear of being arrested? I mean, what the hell is that? That was really interesting. It was really interesting. And the winds would change directions really fast too. And it's just really bizarre. I mean, there was this one, I think it was off Fall Creek Road. We saw a house that's totally demolished, but then not too far from it was a house standing perfectly fine, just nothing even close, you know, just really weird. But thank God we weren't actually fighting the huge ones. And I think that's what was nice about the young Brooks, because I think they actually had a tanker truck or something like that. I mean, the fires we were fighting were maybe the size of this room or a little smaller. I mean, thank God we weren't fighting walls of flames. You know, I just can't even imagine that. But we were just concerned about the smaller fires becoming big again and continuing. And there was just so many of them everywhere. I mean, I don't know how many. It's just countless fires we put out, little teeny guys, you know. Well, it wouldn't have got fixed if someone else was left to fix it. I'm pretty sure of that. I think we probably would have lost the town.
The fire at one point was spotting 5 miles ahead of it because the humidity at the time, I think, was like 5%. It was probably some of the lowest it's had in 100 years. And the winds were reaching up to 30 to 35 miles an hour and peaks. And so it was taking those embers, and when it goes up in the air, the ember doesn't go out right away because there's no humidity in the air to put it out, so it can travel 5 miles and start another spot fire. Before we got the relief center started, there were some periods of time, like a couple days, that people would be meeting in that same parking lot, and that's actually the people that have been mentioned in other interviews about going up and fighting the fires. They were there ready to go. They would come up and they'd be full of like all their tree cutting gear, firefighter gear. They'd have loads of water in the back. They'd meet there, they'd figure out where they could be helpful, and they'd go. And these are people that are not just from our area, they're people from everywhere, all around Malala, Colton, Sandy, Estacada, Damascus, Boring, anything within a decent range. They would show up, go out, they'd fight. I don't know how long they'd be there. They'd come back and they'd be there the next morning ready to go. And that was just absolutely amazing to see. I remember driving around, giving all the reports and things from the beginning as much as I could, trying to show people that their houses were there and stuff, and trying to like, oh, go here, go here, go here. I mean, it's like there was hundreds of people trying to tell me to go different places. It wasn't going to happen. But so that was a big thing.
Well, I think one thing I knew when I went up on Morgan Road the third day, we had community peoples like they did around Fall Creek Road, Estacada rural area, up by the Mennonite church. The people that turned out to fight the fire on their own. And it's been my experience in the past that when you have a major disaster, the neighbors, the public, they're going to come out and they want to help. And you better, you'd be wise to use them, make assignments for them, and let them do their job and help out. And that's the thing I was proud of, that the community once again put their safety behind them and decided to help extinguish that fire. And in the 2020 fire, it looked like there was some confusion and rejection there, but those people responded anyhow, regardless. They stayed up all night, fought out hot spots, saved people's houses and property, and that's the thing that I really looked at, yes, as being very, very important.
It was definitely smoky. I stayed in the house most of the time. The air quality in the house was just fine. The air quality outside, not so much. Had a lot of debris brought in by the wind from the fire. Burnt leaves, burnt pine needles, ash, but for the most part, I did just fine. I don't know. I think it's, after 28 years in the military, I was trained to make do with what you've got. I think the thing that amazed me the most was how everybody pulled together. There were no slackers. There was nobody saying, well, it's not my problem, or my house isn't in danger, I don't care. No, everybody was here. Everybody was pitching in and everybody was fighting. So didn't matter whether your house was in danger or not, you were there. So we had a lot of people, local residents, with water tanker trucks, with pumps, with bulldozers, track hose, backhoes, and out there with just shovels. Local residents, not firefighters, just regular everyday people, said to hell with the fire department, we're going out and fighting this ourselves, and they did. And I think it embarrassed the hell out of Clackamas because their strategy meeting was, gee, maybe we better get back to fighting the fire. Mayor Drinkwine, geez, he was everywhere. I mean, yeah, it's just like every time you turn around, Sean was doing something for somebody. I've never seen a mayor that was so motivated and activated and just absolutely amazing.
Because we fought for days and days and days, and people were exhausted. And days after the fire was scaled back and they started getting control of it, I mean, the relief center was nonstop. People were bringing money, they were bringing food, they were bringing everything they could to help the people. The media was covering it from left to right. I mean, other countries were there talking about the bravery and the city and the way they stick together and the kind of camaraderie we all have in this city. Nobody understands it. It's a love and it's a pride that just goes above and beyond. And these people just kept fighting. They kept fighting. They kept helping people. You know, we found people that were trapped out there, didn't have power, or didn't have this or didn't have that, and people made sure they had it. You know, there were lines for people to get food, and that kept going for a week afterwards. You know, a week or 2 weeks afterwards. The rescue center operating 100%, giving people what they need, doing everything they could to help everybody, and we were in the middle of an evacuation. So, and then the night of, when the fire was at its closest, I think it was probably about, 1,000 feet out, I could see the trees burning. And I'm looking out in the distance and I'm thinking, this is it. It's all over. How am I going to walk away from this? What am I going to tell people? My city burned down. I mean, that's not even logical. That's not even a thought I would ever think I'd have to have. But that said, I'm standing there and I'm looking at the fire coming. And all of a sudden, the wind stops. It stopped. I tell you, if you weren't religious, you would have been. Because at that point, I think there was divine intervention that stopped that fire from taking our city that night.
We had started a group called the Estacada Community Watch. We were doing things like just kind of serving the community, trying to do emergency response for people that needed help or what may have come up. And we hadn't really done much as far as emergencies yet.
Came out of nowhere, said she was going to open up a relief center to help the needy people. Well, we saw a little bit of that, and that turned out to be a scam. So we knew we couldn't let this go on. So we said, okay, we got to get her out. We got her out, and everybody that was associated with her rescue center.
They loaded up their truck. There's two of them. Loaded up their truck with a bunch of supplies that were donated from the people of Estacada for the people of Estacada and for the firefighters. They loaded up their truck. They had taken a couple $1,000s in Venmo on their phone, and I don't know how much in cash. And they took their stuff and they left with it. So we were left with this huge mess of of stuff that we spent, I think, a couple days moving over, trying to inventory what we could. In the end, a lot of people's stuff disappeared from that donation area, and the ECW had to do the best we can to replace it for them. Mayor Drinkwine realized that there wasn't a good sense of communications with fire, the police, the people, the incident command. There wasn't a whole lot of good communication happening for the people of Estacada, and there wasn't a resource place to go kind of accumulate that together. He says, we need a command center. We need a place where we can get the information in one place, we can operate out of, we can figure out this whole evac thing. We need to sort it out. And so I said, okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thankfully, this company, the sleep company, let us take over their offices and everything. It was.
And they said, yes, whatever you need, we'll come down, we'll unlock it for you, we'll give you a key, and you can use anything you need in here. Just do what you got to do.
I said, I need you right now. Can you perform as a relief center? Can you pull this off? And the person turned to me and said, you know what? I think we can. Needless to say, after that, it was game on. They brought together everybody near and far from other states were coming in and dropping off items, and they wanted to help with the relief session, and media coverage came, and they had us all over the place telling people what was happening in Estacada. And the part that amazed me is these people put together a rescue center to no end in a matter of not even 24 hours. And the next thing I know, they're handling thousands of people, food, clothing, cosmetic products, anything you needed, they had it. If you needed therapy, they had therapists on hand. If you needed medical, they had medical on hand.
There was a lot of need in town that Estacada Community Watch took over the strip mall by the Cazadero and had a command center there, and there was a tremendous need for the citizens of Estacada. I remember not meeting the board or the members of Estacada Community Watch yet, but further meeting them in the future, and we've maintained that friendship since then.
Our relief center had so much going on, but I'll tell you, most of our donations were physical items, and those were coming in. We had a makeshift food bank set up inside with like food items and things like that. We had a child section with baby items and toys and everything you think of, diapers and wipes and medications and like over-the-counter medications, and toys. And then you had an area with coats and jackets and clothes, and then you go out and then the big tent, and you had more clothes and more diapers and shoes and electronics. I mean, everything you could think of. We had phones donated. We had the counselors set up to talk to people. If someone came in and they had lost their home, they'd go through talking with myself and with Joel and with other people that had different resources. We'd get them everything we could think of. They'd talk to an insurance person. They'd talk to a pastor or a counselor. They talk to everybody there that could possibly get them help. And then we'd continue to talk to them and continue to communicate with them and make sure they got what they needed. If we had families that were displaced and had nowhere to go, we'd get them a hotel room. We'd get them a hotel voucher and a food voucher and ways to take care of them. We had hot meals coming in, and volunteers serving these hot meals, not only to fellow volunteers, but also to the firefighters that would come in and get rest and eat and just hang out. We were open 24/7.
I knew that Sean Drinkwine was down there helping out. Of course, I was there several times, whether it was assisting other citizens in Estacada. I saw Joel Litke and Brandy Litke and the mayor there pretty much every time I was there, and along with the same staff and everybody. When I'd pull up, the same people would bring everything out to me, so I got to know the faces.
People would drive up, they would automatically get a bag of food, a box of food with fruits and vegetables, milk, and a bunch of other stuff. They get a case of water, basically everything they need. Just pull up, open the trunk, put it in, and they could go. People that needed more would pull over, they'd come in. We had more specific hygiene items and food items, and we had like baby items. We had pretty much anything that you might need. Someone that lost it, someone that couldn't get out the store. The big problem was all the stores were closed because of what was going on. And the stores that were open locally were basically shopped out because they couldn't get stuff in because there was an emergency going on. So we were the place to go to get stuff at the time, and we were just, it was all donations, so we were just giving it to people, of course.
When I found out that this almost total stranger to me and this crew decided to risk their own family's safety to deliver a trailer to us, it meant a ton to me, it meant a ton to her, it meant a ton to our whole family.
They provided for the town. That was one of the most amazing things about the fire that I remember is that relief center. I don't think there was any other town in the entire state or area that can even come close to what these guys did. I can't thank them enough. Can't thank the town enough.
Yes, I went to the relief center and got food and all that for us and water. I even had extra stuff I dropped off in donation to help those people out that need it as well.
And I remember all the good food that restaurants were coming over with. That was incredible.
The first time I ever visited the relief center, and I saw the cars wrapped around the parking lot and down the street, and all coming in at a fast pace, and there were, 20, 30 people in the grocery area that they had set up, bagging groceries to give to these people to take home to their families, to be able to feed their people. Clothing, a whole tent set up with clothing, and that blew me away.
We had a massive area recovering. People that lost their homes and their whole town over in Detroit, I think, showed up with for some stuff a couple times because they were trying to get out of the area. And then we sent loads of stuff to some areas to drop off some supplies as well.
The town was full of people that were either helping fight the fire or they were putting if they didn't have the capability of doing that, they were coming down to the command center, the relief center. We had hundreds of volunteers. Anything you could possibly think of, we had. It was a huge, huge undertaking that would have never been possible if we didn't have the community coming together like we did. This wouldn't have happened without all the people coming together, but it also wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a leader that has such a good head on his shoulders. Together came up with, we need to do more, and this is how we're going to do it. If we didn't have a leader that cared about his community, that fought for his community, ECW wouldn't have had the support that we did.
We were at the relief center, and a lady came running up to me and she said, we're from the Washington area, and we've come down here because we heard what's happened to you guys. We've seen you on the news, we've seen your city, and we're praying for you. And she handed me a big bag, and I was like, well, what's this? And she goes, everybody in our community has come together, and these are gift certificates and everything you'll need for anybody who needs it, and you do what you will with it, but we love you and we're praying for you. So talk about put a tear in your eye. That'll do it.
Joel, Sean, Randy did all an amazing job. It'd be a good idea to volunteer because it'd be great to help other people that needed food, clothes, any toiletries, personal stuff things like that, that they need. It was well worth it.
Just wanted to help the community, but I didn't realize how much I wanted to help the communities until that ask. My community asked if they can borrow coffee pots. I thought I can do much more. So I said, I can't just be here and not get involved. So I walked my happy little self downtown, and I used the skills that I had. I'm a counselor. and displacement is a big thing, going through it myself, and just felt like I needed to help someone else.
Estacada Community Watch that is helping connect people to resources and services. I've got to say that if it wasn't for all the people that have donated and kept everybody fed and clothed and everything else, the outpouring was just amazing.
Estacada Community Watch, I mean, it's incredible how quickly that group organized and how much they were doing right days after the evacuations, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I can't even begin to tell you what it was like being here and seeing the outpouring from all the different communities all over Oregon, Washington, California. We saw a major impact. That's, you know, the heart at the end of the day in Oregon as a whole is just amazing to me. And to see Estacada on top of that in such a horrific time was surreal, you could say.
Overwhelming coming together of everybody. Didn't matter whether you were friend or foe, didn't matter whether you were of the same political beliefs, religious beliefs, it didn't matter. You were all fighting the fire. That's the way it should be all the time.
County realized how quickly we got it up and we got a good source going, so they said, hey, we're not going to try to double the efforts. We're going to give our support to you. What do you need? We had, I think Penske Trucks donated a couple of refrigeration vehicles to us. The mayor, Sandy, got us our first food box load. Salvation Army, just tons and tons of food. I can't even tell you how many boxes of food were there, pallets and pallets. And they, right here in town, Workforce Now, they donated like the back half of their entire warehouse for us to use for storage and sorting and everything for like a month. It might have been even longer than that. It was a really long time. There's about 15,000 families. How many people that extended out to, we don't know, but about 15,000 families came through in about 2 weeks. We estimated around $1 million worth of stuff donated that went back out.
We had some of those quilts that were left behind or left over because we hadn't gotten to every fire victim yet. And so we had this wonderful time of a couple weeks afterwards of families that were coming back from, they decided to stay longer in their being away, and they were coming back and to find out that we had this beautiful handmade quilt for them along with all kinds of other donations. Those quilts meant a lot. It was such a big deal.
I remember one point, Willamette egg, 5,000 pounds of eggs. I don't even know how many cases there was hundreds of cases. Each case had 15 dozen in it, in a case, and we had like hundreds of these cases.
Joe was making me take eggs. I mean, we already had so many eggs. We had the fridge totally full of eggs. I mean, we gave Joe and Deb a bunch of eggs. Tony, I was like, man, I got so many eggs. You guys got to start taking these things. That was a lot of eggs. Where did all those eggs come from, by the way?
We had thousands and thousands of eggs that were donated to us, and we got them to everybody. I mean, every restaurant in town, every volunteer, the Mennonites, anybody we could think of to give these eggs to, we did.
Joel and Brandon Litzke headed up that community resource things. I know Shirley and I swung in there and asked them what they needed, and then we took off shopping. But I think it was awesome how everybody come together, even outside our community.
Oh, it was very emotional to see who all stepped up. You know, the Mike's Wild Pizza driving in with a semi-load of pizzas.
We communicated with groups that were forming, a long-term recovery group formed out of this, and they are to this day helping to rebuild homes of those that lost their homes. We have all these amazing connections now with resources that are there. When anytime there's an emergency or a need, we can reach out to them.
Even though we helped a lot of people during that time, it made a huge difference and made like a huge impact for the families and stuff like that.
I would have to say, never forget the village. We as human beings tend to have short memories. And we forget once life gets back to normal, what we've all shared. It is so important that We remember as a community that we're vulnerable to things like the 22 fires as well as the 20 fires. And the question is it too hard as a community to be nice to each other? Is it too hard in a community to be mindful of each other and to speak well of each other? Or do we need another fire to remind us? I hope not.
It made me really, really happy that I have a community that sticks together through thick and thin and put our differences aside and help one another in a time of crisis.
You know, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I think it brought a lot of us together. I think it really tightened up the town.
It opened my eyes to the fact that the world can be good. If you don't necessarily agree on certain things, you're supposed to hate that person. And that's not the way it used to be. We need to find a way to get back to what we were during the fires, where it doesn't matter what you believe, you're a part of this community and we're going to work together to save it. That's the way it should be all the time. The more love you put out into the world, the more love will circulate, and hopefully we can make that grow. Join a nonprofit, or you don't even have to join a nonprofit. You can go out and do the work yourself. You have a neighbor that's in need. See what they need. See if you can help them. Make sure your elderly and disabled neighbors are okay. And if there's an emergency in your town, check in on them.
The ECW has been called out by a lot of people for being a group that likes guns or that puts down, you know, people because they're liberal or they think differently. ECW is everything but that. ECW was there for all of us. Before there was ever anything else, I put them on the spot and I said, hey, can you perform this duty for me? I did not have a city here, okay? My city manager, my city staff were all gone. They were evacuated, okay? I was here and I needed help. The ECW came through for me. As a mayor, as a city, they were there for each and every one of you. And they've gotten a bad rap. As times went on, I've heard things, you know, about what the ECW is really all about, or the fact that they're Trump lovers, or they're this, or they're that. And you know what? They are everything but that. They are hardworking people just like you, who care about you, and they deserve the credit that should be awarded them. And I, right now, on this video, am giving them that, because they deserve it. They did a lot. And without them, I couldn't have did my job. I couldn't have helped the people. I couldn't have done anything. They were there for everything. They put it all together, and at the end of the day, they didn't ask for anything. Just respect. That's it. That's the kind of people you have here. That's the kind of people that make up this whole thing. You know, so ask yourself, who would you want at your back during something like this? It's them. So I hope when you're done with all this and you've seen this, and you're sitting there wondering, you know, God, I didn't realize all this went on. Make sure if you ever meet some of those ECW people, thank them. Thank them for who they are. Because there's some great people. Great people.
Oh gosh, if it wasn't for Doug Davidson, his actions that night were him and I don't know who he had with him, but their actions were huge. Jeff Goodrich, my son Luke, they were in one. I'll take that back. Luke and one of the Mennonite boys were in one rig, and Tom, my brother Tom, and Jeff Goodrich were in another, and they were they were doing a lot of damage to the fire. Between Doug and them, they kept the fire from jumping Highway 224. And that would have been horrible. The mobile home court up there, up the river, there was, I understand, a lot of elderly people that refused to evacuate. We would have lost some lives if it would have jumped. And watching the videos, seeing the pictures of where they were when the fire was doing that, I truly believe we would have lost most of Estacada.
We're not like every other town out there. We are a separate town. We have our own culture. We have our own way of doing things. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that as I was spent 6 years in the military, and the way that the community came together in so many different areas, fighting the crisis, keeping the fire at bay, stepping up when no one else was, being there with the relief center, working together and drawing that, being a people that drew others to them. It wasn't just Estacada, we drew other people to us. That is something I've never seen before. And I've seen efficient systems work together. And the fight worked the way it was, and the relief center worked the way it was only because of the people of Estacada, and they made it happen.
I drove up to the Hillock Burn area. Right after the fire, things were still smoldering. And I drove up to the Hillock Church on Hillock Burn. And I looked over the church, and the church had burned down to the ground. And I saw the chimney stack. It was the only thing still standing. But on that chimney stack, I saw a white porcelain angel just sitting there, all smoky looking like it had been through the fire, but it was sitting there on that perch. And I said to myself, boy, this is like a moment. I mean, where are you going to see that? You know, I'm out here by myself assessing the damage. People's houses are still smoldering. You know, house here, another house over here lost, one house still standing, you know, and here we have a church that burned to the ground. And we have an angel sitting on a parish. You tell me.
And the mayor, I mean, the mayor did a really good job. He was always there, like Johnny on the spot, you know. I mean, he was, I know, you know, I sensed some of his frustration with how the things went with the fire and all that stuff. And I think that's what helped push us through getting our own fire department again, which I'm so glad we do.
I talked to Sean after things had kind of calmed down. I guess my displeasure with Clackamas fire and what I saw, and that's the driving force of let's keep Estacada fire, get Estacada fire back. I called a group together and had a meeting to stop the merger or the takeover, and we succeeded in getting a vote no, and got Estacada fire back. Being kind of a spearhead of that, it was pretty scary because if Estacada Fire Department would fail, I would be feeling pretty horrible. But everybody kept saying you'll never get the volunteers, and I kept thinking, I think we will, and we have. I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, you know, after Clackamas's performance in the whole fire, I felt that we were inadequately covered for our services, but I didn't know the process that was being talked about. And a well-respected person in our community that came to me, probably one of my first customers as a sign maker, came to me and he said, you know, Sean, and by the way, everybody knows George Youngberg. I trust him with my life. The guy is as solid gets. He came to me and he said, you know, he says, a lot of this is happening in the way we were treated by Clackamas Fire when we were out there trying to help put out this fire, and they needed the help, by the way. There was no doubt about it. That fire was out of control. When he said that they called them names, taunted them, told them to get out of the areas, told them they were going to call the cops on them, told them they were going to be arrested, and all for what? Because these people wanted to protect their homes? Because they were going to let them burn? Come on. I couldn't go with a fire department that thinks that way, that acts that way. So when George asked me to please consider rescinding my vote and going with us starting our own fire department, there was no question. If George was telling me this was the issue, this was the issue. So I went and I rescinded my vote. After doing so, all the other councilors also rescinded their vote. It was unanimous that we were going to start our own fire department. And that's exactly what happened. You know, everybody stepped up. Our volunteer list, I mean, I couldn't believe how many volunteers were out there. There were so many that joined up. I think our fire department at this point is a showpiece. for the rest of the state of Oregon that, you know, you can do this and you can do this locally. I mean, your people will do this if they believe in where they are. And they sure as heck believe where they are, because everybody that's out there that's volunteered, has put in time, has done everything they can to be the best fire department they can be. And they're doing it. They're doing it. They're putting places to shame. And they don't hesitate to get it done. Don't hesitate. And we're talking men, women, every one of them working hard together to get this done. And I gotta say, I'm more than impressed with the fire department. I mean, the fire department is above and beyond anything I ever had anticipated they'd be. And now, like I said, they're a showpiece. I think the rest of the state should take a look at what a real fire department looks like, because they're it.
Proud that we took it back. I was opposed to it from the beginning because I talked to a lot of citizens and they did not want their fire department to go away. They wanted to keep it local. So the community come together and they told the operating authorities, the fire department, they sent a message to them and we changed our tune and we got back our fire department. And we're back to being a hometown fire department. I don't know if you noticed, but our doors are wide open anymore, or now, and they're not closed anymore, shut up tight. We're open. We're a community fire department. We were prepared. I think we got over 70 personnel, counting career and volunteers, and they're anxious to help.
We voted to tell Clackamas thank you very much, but no thank you. We're going to have an Estacada Fire Department. And so now we have an Estacada Fire Department made up of Estacada residents that care about Estacada, that know Estacada, know the roads, know the people, and we're a lot better off.
Since post-fire, we realized that Clackamas wasn't the answer and that we needed our own fire department back. So we came together as a people and said, hey, we want Estacada Fire. They came in, it was a risk, and guess what? That was a bet that paid off because they have done so well and they've brought so much to this town to be a hometown fire department, to work and interact with the people, to be able to, you know, go down and chat with the guys, or if an emergency happens, to show up and say, hey guys, how's it going? And they know you, they know who you are, they live in this community, they interact in this community, they have a connection. And that's just not talking about the volunteers. I mean, the volunteers is on top of it, is class after class after class of volunteers. And it's because people saw the difference between a local and what it takes to do that and in a larger fire department.
You know, not trying to knock Clackamas Fire, but part of our frustration was just they were just sitting there, you know, and that's why I'm so glad we got our own guys. You know, I think that showed in just our McIver Park situation how fast we dealt with that. So I am thankful that we have our own guys again. I mean, I know we had backup and all that and help from other departments, but we have our core guys actually here. You know, most of them living here, and you know, basically they have everything to lose just like we do. And I think that's the difference. Not to take away from firemen in general, but when you have a lot to lose yourself, I think it just kind of throws a little more oomph into it.
I never caught up with him, but I knew he was out there. He stopped by the fire station, maybe an hour before I got there, but I got high respect for our mayor. He's community involved, and if there's anything going on, especially emergency-wise, he's out of bed and he's out there trying to get help or make sure the community is safe.
I think Nick Brown becoming fire chief of Clackamas Fire, we've had discussions. I think he's doing a great job of working together with Estacada, working with this fire last week up on Springwater. It was an eye-opener that they're willing to take our local help, and they worked really well with us and worked really well with Estacada. So I'm pretty happy about that. I think Nick's doing a great job of working to get the wildfire stuff, a good program going for that, along with Estacada.
It was a lot of things came up with our recent fires that we had about a week and a half ago. That things could get out of hand, and there was a different part of Estacada that was definitely in jeopardy.
By far, I would say, McIver, this last fire that we just had, was pretty bad and pretty scary, and it was moving pretty fast again. It was almost a complete replay of what we went through, but more closer to home. And I gotta say, the responses and how fast our fire department was on scene, and then all the other fire departments that have all signed on as a contract, if there's a fire, they all come running. They were all there. Every city was on hand. Every city was fighting. If this had happened during the big fire, who knows where we'd be right now? Who knows how many areas we would have lost if we'd have had that many people respond. That's the difference between a fire department that talks and works together. Because now they've got a system. They know how to do it. And they've proven that. And this McIver fire was a good example. They stomped that baby out faster than you could shake a stick. And it was moving quick. I was up there that night and I was watching those flames. I watched them 20 feet from the road up there at Springwater. And those guys were stamping that out. The minute one sprung up, they were putting it out. So, that to me is true teamwork. Because you had all these fire departments working together. And not one of them was acting like they were better than the other. They were getting it done. And then our own fire department, like I said, they were on location. They were fighting without hesitation. And they were saving houses. They were saving everybody. And it didn't matter, protocol. They weren't looking at, the Clackamas handbook as to see if they could save the house or not. Or tell you because it's only burning your tree, they're not going to save your backyard. Really? So, no, I got to say, this was a good example of what our fire department can do. And I am very proud of them. And I will never, ever hear or say a bad thing about this fire department. And if they ever need me for anything, I'm 100% in their corner.
Very happy with our present Estacada Fire Department. The coordination of certain city councilmen, Joel, and the mayor this time, same as it was last time. No different. You guys were there when everybody here in Estacada needed you. So I thank you guys for that. I didn't know you too well back then, but I know you well enough now that you speak for the citizens of all of Estacada, not just within the city limits, but for example, the 2 fires we had last weekend. Not inside the city limits, but you guys were there, coordinating with the city manager and making sure all the information was put out that was correct. So everyone really appreciated that.
In this video, you will see a few of them, like the Dobbs and George Youngberg's in here. There's no way I could thank them enough for what they did. And I know that they don't see themselves that way, but they are Estacada heroes. Just like our mayor is an Estacada hero. And I don't think he gets enough credit for everything he's done. He was not only on the ground, first to notify, first to know what's going on, he also busted his butt to make sure people knew what needed to be done, to make sure his town was cared for, even when other people were acting like fools. He was evacuated with evacuees at Rogers Ranch when he could have easily been somewhere else, but he wanted to be with his people, Estacada. He also was back at our relief center constantly putting in backbreaking work to serve this community. He was communicating with those in charge. He was running all over town. He was getting donations. He was working at the relief center. He was up making sure those fighting the fire had what they needed. The fire departments had what they needed. I mean, he was everywhere at once. This man deserves a lot more credit than most people give him. He also, throughout the last couple years that we've gotten to become close to him, has served this community in so many aspects that most people don't know. He has been known to get himself deep into somebody's yard and help with yard work when we say, hey, we have an elderly person in need, we're getting some volunteers together. He'll jump in with us and he'll serve right alongside us. If a leader that is willing to do that, to me, is a true leader. He's not out there sticking his nose up or acting better than any of you. He's out there taking care of those that are most in need in our community, and also busting his butt to try to get things done at City Hall. So next time you see our mayor, maybe give him a thank you for helping to save us, because he's a big reason why we're still here.
And it's kind of unfortunate that we have to have something so drastic happen for people to put aside their differences. If you want to be the change in the world, you got to start. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant.
Just when you get angry with your neighbor, just remember sometimes hard times come, and forgiveness is right there to be had. It's just sometimes we get so caught up in stupid stuff that we lose sight of the big picture, I think, which is just all of us in this together.
You already live in a community where there's great people, and you might not know about it, and it shouldn't take a catastrophic situation to see that those people are great. And at the same time too, all of us have greatness inside of us. We shouldn't wait for something like that to come out and be great. So you might not have the skill set to rebuild a house. You might not have the finances to, fill a truck and trailer and drive hay down south to the animals that can't be evacuated. But you can open the door for somebody. You can smile at a stranger. You can pick up that person's coffee that's standing behind you when it looks like, maybe they need that cup of coffee that day. All the little things, mean maybe not as much, but every little bit counts. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, those people, did something great, or wow, that community is awesome, you have an opportunity to make that difference in your community as well.
I really want to see our town, our county, our state, our country come back together and realize that when you do that, you're so much stronger. When you come together and you fight together and you stop allowing things divide you, you're so much stronger, and it's so much easier to do life that way.
So when you ask me what I do as a mayor, am I happy doing it? Do I, what makes me want to be a mayor? Then I have to say to you, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I want to do this? This is why I'm here right now, and this is why I will continue to be a mayor for as long as you'll have me. Because you, the people, have shown me what true love, admiration, pride in your area, beyond a shadow of a doubt. So that's really everything that makes this job what it is and makes me love this city the way I do. I gotta say, there's no city that I'd rather be in or a part of than the one that I'm in right now. Estacada's got more heart and soul. They saved more people. They rescued people left and right, animals alike. It didn't matter. They did it without pay. They did it without sleep. They did it without anything. And they were not working for Clackamas County. They were not a fire department. But they did everything in their power to save what it is we all love about this area. So I have to say to myself, at the end of all this tragedy that we've been through, was it all worth it? I think so. I think it was more than worth it because the people stood for something.